عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the previous lesson we were discussing the statement of Abu Ali an-Naysaburi, and we have proven that from this statement he does not necessarily mean that Ṣahīh al-Bukhārī is more authentic than Ṣahīh Muslim. So now, after discussing the statement of Abu Ali an-Naysaburi, Ulama Ibn Hajar rahimahullah now discusses the objections of some of the scholars of the West. And obviously when he refers to the West, then it's the western portion of the Muslim world at that time. So it's scholars from Andalus and from Marrakesh, etc., from the Maghrib. So here in Nuzha an-Naḍar, he does not give any names, nor does he mention the exact words. And also bear in mind here that the reason why he is mentioning this here, as we have explained last week, from the statement, or from the quotation of Allama Qasim rahimahullah, is because he was not pleased with the way that Ibn Salah rahimahullah responded. So Ibn Salah rahimahullah, as we mentioned last week, that he mentioned he brought these statements on page 18 and 19 of his Ulum al-Ḥadīth. And he says, فَهَذَا وَقَوْلُ مَنْ فَضَّلَ مِنْ شُيُوخِ الْمَغْرِبِ كِتَابْ مُسْلِمْ عَلَى كِتَابِ الْبُخَارِ. So there too, the name of the scholars and the exact statements are not mentioned. However, in Ḥadīth Sari, the commentary, the introduction of his commentary of Ṣahīh al-Bukhārī, the Muqaddamah of Fath al-Bari, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, there he discusses this in a bit more detail. So he mentions there that firstly, it's not known of anyone in the West who clearly mentioned that the reason why Sahih Muslim is getting a preference is because of authenticity. وَأَمَّا بَعْضُ شُيُوخِ الْمَغَارِبَ فَلَا يُحْفَظُ عَنْ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ تَقْيِيدُ الْأَفْضَلِيَّةِ بِالْأَصَحِّيَّةِ. That if there's no proof of anyone saying that Sahih Muslim is more authentic, all they done was that they said Sahih Muslim is better in a general sense. So they said, but بَلْ أَطْلَقَ بَعْضُهُمْ الْأَفْضَلِيَّةِ, that it is better, it is greater. But they didn't mention that it's because of authenticity. Now, which scholars mention it? So he quotes Qadi Iyāz rahmallah, stating that Abu Marwan at-Tubni, he said that some of his teachers, so again, the names of the teachers are not mentioned. You just have one scholar, Abu Marwan at-Tubni, mentioning that some of his teachers would prefer Sahih Muslim over Sahih al-Bukhārī. So the words used there is كان بعض شيوخي يفضل صحيح مسلم على صحيح البخاري. Again, here you can see that it's just mentioned that they gave preference to Sahih Muslim over Sahih al-Bukhārī. It's not mentioned that this here was because of authenticity. Then Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentions there that he found an explanation from another scholar from the West, and it was Ibn Hazm, that he says كان أبو محمد بن حزم يفضل كتاب مسلم على كتاب البخاري, and the reason there is clearly mentioned لأنه ليس فيه بعد خطبته إلا الحديث السرد. Now Ibn Salah rahmallah, when he is quoting this here in his Ulum al-Hadith on page 19, then it seems that he was actually referring to Ibn Hazm. Why? Because these exact same words ليس فيه بعد خطبته إلا الحديث السرد, Ibn Salah rahmallah mentions there إن كان المراد بأن أن كتاب مسلم يترجح بأنه لم يمازحه غير الصحيح فإنه ليس فيه بعد خطبته إلا الحديث الصحيح مسرودا. So you can see the exact same reason is mentioned there. So therefore Ibn Hajar rahmallah says that he personally feels وعندي أن ابن حزم هذا هو شيخ أبي مروان الطبني, that when Abu Marwan al-Tubni said that كان بعض شيوخي يفضل, that some of my teachers would prefer, maybe he's referring to Ibn Hazm. And if he is referring to Ibn Hazm, then it's very simple. We found that Ibn Hazm rahmallah clearly mentioned the reason. Therefore, it has nothing to do with authenticity. Ibn Hazm is clearly saying لأنه ليس فيه بعد خطبته إلا الحديث السرد, that in Sahih Muslim, after the khutbah of his kitab, he only brings a hadith. So as you know that Imam Muslim rahmallah did not even put chapter headings. It was Imam Nawawi rahmallah who put the headings, and that is why he made it seem like Sahih Muslim is full of proofs of Shafi'is, when you're doing Sahih Muslim, the Ustad will explain to you how so many times there is takalluf in the chapter to find what is the a reason that a particular narration is under a particular chapter. So Imam Muslim rahmallah, he just brought a hadith. Whereas Imam Bukhari rahmallah, in the chapters, in the headings of the chapters, he made so many statements there, etc. He brought other dalail and other viewpoints, etc. So because of this reason, he was preferring Sahih Muslim over Sahih al-Bukhārí. So it clearly shows that it has nothing to do with authenticity, and therefore his statement, which he mentioned earlier, وَلَمْ يُوجَدْ عَنْ أَحَدٍ التَّصْرِيحُ بِنَقِيضِهِ, is still in place. Then Ibn Hajar rahmallah says that maybe they're referring to another scholar, but the reason will still be the same. And then he says that there was another scholar from the Maghrib, another Spanish scholar from Andalus, who was a contemporary of Imam Darqutni rahmallah, and he said with regards to Sahih Muslim, that لَمْ يَضَعْ أَحَدٌ مِثْلُهُ. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah then mentions there, فَهَذَا أَمْرُهُمْ عَلَى حُسْنِ الوَضْعِ وَجَوْدَةِ التَّرْتِيبِ. He's saying that all of this here is based, that Imam Muslim rahmallah, the way he brought the ahadith in a flowing manner, and he put it all in an orderly form, etc. It is because of that reason. So here he now brings the exact same reason which he mentioned there. So he says, وكذلك ما نقل عن بعض المغاربة أنه فضل صحيح مسلم على صحيح البخاري فذلك فيما يرجع إلى حسن السياق وجودة الوضع والترتيب. So you can see he's saying that it's because of the way and the manner in which Imam Muslim rahmallah brought all the ahadith, and he put it all, the presentation basically, he brought it all, the full hadith. Imam Bukhari rahmallah, at times he would bring a portion of a hadith because that particular portion was his dalil, so he brings it under a particular chapter. And then another portion of the hadith, he brings it in a completely different part of the kitab. So he does not even bring one hadith in a complete manner at one place. Whereas Imam Muslim rahmallah, he was very specific in this way. So then he again now stresses, وَلَمْ يُفْصِحْ أَحَدٌ مِّنْهُمْ بِأَنَّ ذَلِكَ رَاجِعٌ إِلَى الْأَصَحِّيَّةِ. He's saying that there is clearly no one who emphatically mentioned that they gave preference because of authenticity. They gave preference because of these reasons. That looking at the tartib, looking at the presentation, Mullah al-Qari rahmallah mentions with regards to the tartib of the kitab, that first Imam Muslim will bring a mujmal, a vague narration, then a narration which is difficult to understand, then something which is abrogated, then something where there is a word which is not clear, and after that he would bring narrations now which will clarify those narrations, it will explain those narrations, the abrogator, the nasikh, he will bring those kind of narrations. So in this way, he brought different mutun with different asanid, and he brought it for a reason, so that you can get a complete picture, you can know what is the nasikh, what is mansukh, etc. Thereafter, a few lines later, he mentions وَقَدْ اخْتَصَّ مُسْلِمٌ فِي كِتَابِهِ أيضا بجمع طرق الحديث في مكان واحد ليسهل الكف منه بخلاف البخاري. That Imam Muslim rahmallah, he brought all the ahadith which is relating to a particular topic at one place. So although he didn't put the chapter headings, but he brought, and that is why it was so easy for a total stranger, for a scholar who came so much later, to put the headings, because it was like that. The presentation was already so good. So, in fact, you will find scholars that a hadith comes in Sahih al-Bukhārí, but because Imam Bukhari rahmallah did not bring it in Ramadan, he brought it in a completely different chapter. There were many scholars who would negate that it comes in Sahih al-Bukhārí. Whereas in Sahih Muslim, if you are looking for a hadith, it's so simple and so easy to find the hadith. That besides bringing different asanid, so those of you who read Sahih Muslim, you know that how he brings nahu, he brings the sanad and nahu, brings the sanad and mithluhu. He mentions so many different asanid with regards to one matan. But then also at times he brings tahwil, and showing that how from his teachers they narrated from the same teacher, etc. There are approximately 1,236 places, if I remember correctly, in his Sahih where he makes tahwil. So it shows that how he was so specific to show you the different asanid for the different mutun. So all this here clearly shows that Sahih Muslim has additional merit, and it could be preferred, but it is, when looking at it from this angle, it has nothing to do with authenticity. However, because now you are mentioning that Sahih Muslim is getting a little bit preference over Sahih al-Bukhārī. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah, you know that Sahih al-Bukhārī was his kitab. He was the greatest hami of Sahih al-Bukhārī. So he had to now point out that, okay, if you're saying that Sahih Muslim has all of these additional merits, etc., this here comes in, he mentions in Hajjus Sari, he's saying that then also Sahih al-Bukhārī will also have additional merit besides authenticity. وهي ما ضمنه أبوابه من التراجم التي حيرت الأفكار. He's saying that he brought his chapter headings, and his chapter headings is like so intellectual, etc. So from that point, that the fiqh of Bukhari, and you can see his understanding of hadith, it's and basically that is in the chapter headings, it is as if he is explaining the hadith. So from that angle, besides authenticity, Sahih al-Bukhari would be preferred. But when it comes to authenticity, then definitely is saying that Sahih al-Bukhari is definitely more authentic than Sahih Muslim. ولم يصح أحد منهم بأن ذلك راجع إلى الأصحية ولو أفصحوا به لرده عليهم شاهد الوجود. He's saying that even if they had to say that Sahih Muslim is more authentic, then شاهد الوجود. So yeah, this here is a brilliant response of Ibn Hajar rahmallah. He said, like you know how they say, شاهد العيان يغني عن البيان. Like if someone is to argue with you and they say that the sky is pink, so you don't have to now go and bring philosophical and scientific proofs, and you have to go and open books and from different libraries to prove that the sky is not pink. You can just tell him, go outside and look at the sky, and you will see that the sky is not pink. So shahidul wujud. You go and look at the sky, and that's the proof. Ask you, what's your proof that the sky is not pink? Go and look at the sky. That's my proof. You don't have to bring a philosophical proof, so you don't have to go and bring a whole lot of evidences. So like that, if someone wants to say that Sahih al-Bukhari is Sahih Muslim is more authentic than Sahih al-Bukhari, we tell him then go open both kitabs, and it will be glaring in front of you. It will be so evident in front of you. You will see that definitely Sahih al-Bukhari is more authentic than Sahih Muslim. So we don't even have to provide any evidence. But even if you want evidence, then you say that let us look at the 5 conditions of a Sahih narration. So previously on page 58 and 59, he discussed the conditions. وخبر الآحاد بنقل عدل تام الضبط متصل السند غير معلل ولا شاذ وصحيح لذاته. So he mentioned the 5 conditions there for a Sahih hadith. He said if you have to look at every one of these conditions, in every one of them Sahih al-Bukhari excels. And that will prove. So he's saying, يا فالصفات التي تدور عليها الصحة في كتاب البخاري التم منها في كتاب مسلم وأشد وشرطه فيها أقوى وأصد. He's saying that if you have to look at every one of these qualities of a Sahih hadith, so whether it is ittisal, because that's the first condition for a narration to be a Sahih, whether it is looking at the tamud dhabt, whether it is looking at the adala, whether it is looking at the fact that it mustn't be mu'allal, or it should not be shadh, as we have had the whole discussion a few weeks back. So he's saying that in each one of these conditions, Sahih al-Bukhari is more stronger than a Sahih Muslim. So now to prove it, that he's mentioning it in every one of these conditions. So now to prove it that it is really indeed in every one of these conditions. So he's saying, أما رجحانه من حيث الاتصال فلاشتراطه أن يكون الراوي قد ثبت له لقاء من روى عنه ولو مرة واكتفى مسلم بمطلق المعاصرة وألزم البخاري بأنه يحتاج ألا يقبل الأنعنة أصلا وما ألزمه به ليس بلازم لأن الراوي إذا ثبت له اللقاء مرة لا يجري في رواية احتمال إلا يكون سمع لأنه يلزم من جريانه يكون مدلسة والمسألة مفروضة في غير المدلس. So here he's explaining the first quality that a narration has to be muttasil. So to explain this whole paragraph, basically there are different wording which a narrator can use when relating from his teacher. So you can either use such words which very clearly indicate that he indeed did hear it directly from that particular teacher. So for example, he says, Sami'tu, I heard this teacher saying. So if he uses the word Sami'tu, everyone will know that definitely, because you're talking of someone who is adil, so he's not going to be lying. He's going to be talking the truth. If he's saying Sami'tu, and he's mentioning, then you will, his teacher's name, you will understand he heard it directly from his teacher. Likewise, if he says, Haddathani or Haddathana, that he told me, he told us, then obviously it means that he heard it directly. Those are some, and there's a whole chapter which comes on Siyaghul Ada, and we'll do more about this. This is just for understanding very briefly, yeah. So these are some words which you could use. Then there are other words which you could use which do not clearly notify us or indicate to us that he heard directly from that particular sheikh. For example, he just uses the word an, and if he has to take the word an and say and take the sheikh's name, it's like saying from this particular sheikh. So from here, if he says that from the sheikh, we cannot be convinced that he actually did hear that particular narration from the sheikh. So now here, in this narration which is narrated with the word an, it's called a mu'an'an narration. So here Ibn Hajar rahmallah is claiming that Imam Bukhari rahmallah would regard a mu'an'an narration as muttasil. That is, if the student has to narrate from his sheikh using the word an, like when you open the kitabs, you see it's very frequently this year that you have the student's name and then the word an, and then the sheikh's name, and there will be some examples which we'll show a bit later. So, Ibn Hajar rahmallah is mentioning that Imam Bukhari will only regard that particular sanad as muttasil, that assume and take it that the narrator actually heard the one who he is relating from, if there is proof that he at least met that person once. So at least there is a proof that he met the person once. And how would you know that he met the person? So one of the ways is that at another place he says that I heard this particular sheikh saying. So when there's proof of samah, or there are other ways as well. If we have another scholar telling you that that particular student met the teacher. So if there's proof that they met, then they met once. Then if he uses the word an and quotes from that person, we will say that okay, he did hear it from that particular teacher. However, Ibn Hajar then quotes the view of Imam Muslim rahmallah that he would accept the narration even if they merely lived in the same era. It's not necessary, according to Imam Muslim rahmallah, that it has to be proven that they actually did meet. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah is now, after quoting the two views like that, then he's bringing this here, because obviously if you are putting the condition, it shows you how much more stringent you are and how much more severe you are than merely accepting a narration because the narrator was from the same era from the one, because there's so many people who are from the same era but they never ever met. Like probably most of you were born in the if you were born in the 1990s and you did not meet Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, for example, then so one could argue that you're in the same era. Or maybe if you didn't meet Sheikh Nuruddin Itra rahmallah, who just passed away recently, but you were in the same era with him. So there's so many times when a person does not actually meet a person who he is a contemporary with. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentions the two views like this here, and then he says that based on this here, since Imam Bukhari rahmallah puts this additional condition, it shows you that in looking at ittisal, in trying to prove that the sanad is muttasil, Ṣahīh al-Bukhari will get a preference. So when mentioning the view of Imam Muslim rahmallah, he's mentioning it here, وَاكْتَفَى مُسْلِمٌ بِمُطْلَقِ الْمُعَاصَرَةِ. So this makes it seem like Imam Muslim rahmallah just assumed that if they're in the same era, then okay, we can say that that they actually did meet. But like we have explained, that this is not necessarily true, because there are so many people. In fact, majority of the people in your era you don't meet. There are 7 billion people in this world at this time. You won't meet even 6.5 billion of them. So majority of the people in your own era you won't meet. So this is how he quotes the view here. And in Hajj Sari, in exactly the same way he quotes the view of Imam Muslim rahmallah. He says there, وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ مُسْلِمًا كَانَ مَذْهَبُهُ عَلَى مَا صَرَّحَ بِهِ في مقدمة صحيحه وبالغ في الرد على من خالفه أن الإسناد المعنعن له حكم الاتصال إذا تعاثر المعنعن ومن عنعن عنه وإن لم يثبت اجتماعهما إلا إن كان المعنعن مدلسا. So this is how he quotes it in Ijāzah as well, that Imam Muslim rahmallah just puts the condition of mu'asara, that they should be of the same era. But when you go back to the exact text of Imam Muslim rahmallah and you look at his exact words, it is in the introduction of his Ṣahīh, he mentions there, وهذا القول يرحمك الله في الطعن في الأسانيد قول مخترع مستحدث غير مسبوق صاحبه إليه ولا مساعد له من أهل العلم عليه وذلك أن القول الشائع متفق عليه بين أهل العلم بالأخبار والروايات قديما وحديث أن كل رجل ثقة. So look there, that's the first condition. So he's putting the condition that the rawi has to be a thiqa. عن مثله the first condition is that the person has to be. Thereafter he says وَجَائِزٌ مُمْكِنٌ لَهُ لِقَاؤُهُ وَالسَّمَاعُ مِنْهُ. So this here are integral, and Shaykh Awama stresses on this here, that these are essential conditions, and you have to mention it when mentioning the view of Imam Muslim rahimahullah, that it was possible for them to meet. وَجَائِزٌ مُمْكِنٌ لَهُ لِقَاؤُهُ. Because at times maybe there was no possibility for them to have even met, like the one was a baby and the other was an elderly person, so there's no possibility that they met. And then also another condition, he says إِلَّا أَيَّكُونَ هُنَاكَ دَلَالَةٌ بَيِّنَةٌ أَنَّ هَذَا الرَّاوِي لَمْ يَلْقَ مَنْ رَوَى عَنْهُ أَوْ لَمْ يَسْمَعْ مِنْهُ شَيْءٍ. So he mentions his conditions like this. So when you look at the full text of Imam Muslim rahmallah, he's first to put in the condition that the narrator has to be reliable. Then the default condition in this whole thing, and this whole bahth of mu'an'an, is that the narrator should not be a mudallis. Then the third condition is that he should be in the same era at the same time as the one who is narrating from. Then the two additional conditions which are extremely crucial, and it's important to quote when mentioning the view. So when mentioning the view, so Shaykh Muhammad Awama, he mentions all the names of so many scholars who, when they quoted the view of Imam Muslim rahmallah, then they misquoted it, so to say, because they don't mention these two vital conditions, that it should be possible to meet the person who is narrating from. And the fifth condition is that there should be no proof to show that the narrator did not meet the one who he is narrating from. So these are the conditions of Imam Muslim rahmallah. So as we can see that the way Ibn Hajar rahmallah quoted it here, وَاكْتَفَى مُسْلِمٌ بِمُطْلَقِ الْمُعَاصَرَةِ, this here is incorrect. Then even if you have to look at the view which he is quoting of Imam al-Bukhārī rahmallah, that too is not correct. So with regards to Imam Bukhārī rahmallah, he did not clearly mention his conditions for accepting a mu'an'an narration. So scholars there had to deduce his view from studying his rulings. If you look at his different rulings when grading a particular hadith in which there is the word an. And by studying all of those rulings, you can deduce. So it's not clearly mentioned like for Imam Muslim. His view was clearly mentioned in his muqaddimah. Imam Bukhārī rahmallah, you have to deduce his ruling by studying all of his verdicts. So when going through his rulings, we find that Imam Bukhārī rahmallah, he actually did authenticate a hadith, even if there was, if the liqa was not established, if it wasn't proven that the student met that particular teacher. So what Ibn Hajar rahmallah is mentioning here, فَلِشْتِرَاطِ يَكُونَ الرَّوِي قَدْ ثَبَتَ لَهُ لِقَاءُ مَنْ رَوَى عَنْهُ. He's saying that it's essential that according to Imam Bukhārī, that he should have met the person from who he is quoting from. But we find that Imam Bukhārī rahmallah, he actually authenticated a hadith even if the narrator did not, there's no proof that the narrator met that particular teacher. And few examples for this here. One example, Imam Tirmidhi rahmallah in his Sharh al-Ilal, he quotes Imam Bukhārī rahmallah is saying that Ḥadīث Hamna bint Jahsh fi al-Mustahādah huwa hadithun hasanun illa anna Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Talha huwa qadim لا أدري سمع منه عبد الله بن محمد بن عقيل أم لا وكان أحمد بن حنبل يقول هو حديث صحيح. So this here is on page 74 of his al-Kabir. That Imam Tirmidhi is quoting Imam Bukhārī rahmallah is saying that the hadith of Hamna is Hasan. That means it's acceptable. But then after that what he's saying that Ibrahim bin Muhammad, that he is an elderly person, and I don't know if he heard from Abdullah bin Muhammad. So you can see he's grading the hadith as acceptable, even though there is no proof of sama'. But then you might say, okay, yeah, it's possible that he met him, and only whether he heard from him is not established. So then we look at another place, which is even more clear, and it's absolutely emphatic there. So there, Imam Tirmidhi rahmallah asked Imam Bukhari rahmallah, and he even used the words of liqa. So this here is regarding a hadith. Imam Tirmidhi rahmallah firstly quotes the hadith from Muhammad bin Abdul A'la, and he uses the word حدثنا سلمة بن رجاء قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن عبد الله بن دينار عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار عن أبي واقد الليثي. So here you can see he's using the word an, and then he quotes the hadith. So here when he's quoting the hadith, then he mentions after that سألت محمدا عن هذا الحديث. Muhammad means Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhārī. That I asked Imam Bukhari with regards to this hadith. فقلت له, and my exact question, the exact words which I mentioned to him, أترى هذا الحديث محفوظا? That do you think that this hadith is a mahfuz hadith? So he said yes. So then I told him that Ata ibn Yasar adraka Aba Waqid. So you can see here using the word adraka, that here's Ata ibn Yasar met Abu Waqid. So Imam Bukhari rahmallah responded and said, ينبغي أن يكون أدركه عطاء بن يسار قديم. It's possible that they met, and this is exactly what what Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentioned with regards to Imam Muslim, that they were contemporaries, and when we went through the text of Imam Muslim, then imkanul liqa, it was possible for them to meet. So you can see the view which of Imam Bukhari rahmallah. These are just two examples. Obviously, if we have to go through every example without exaggeration, we will need at least 10 sessions to go just through the examples to show you that Imam Bukhari rahmallah actually so many times he graded a hadith as authentic, even if liqa was not established. So then Ibn Kathir rahmallah, he mentioned in his اختصار علوم الحديث, وأما البخاري فإنه لا يشترط في أصل الصحة ولكن التزم ذلك في كتاب الصحيح. He's saying, okay, these here, you can see from these examples, it's been quoted is from other sources. It's not in the Ṣahīh. In Imam Bukhari rahmallah's kitab, in his Ṣahīh, al-Jami' al-Musnad al-Ṣahīh al-Mukhtasar min umur al-Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunani wa iyami, as you know, is Ṣahīh al-Bukhari. It's not in that kitab. So maybe specifically in that kitab of his, in Ṣahīh al-Bukhari, he put the condition. So he would regard the narration, because you know, he put more stringent conditions for Ṣahīh al-Bukhari. So he's saying that in his Ṣahīh, he put the condition. But then we say that even if you have to look in his Ṣahīh, there are so many examples there where Imam Bukhari rahmallah did actually authenticate a hadith even though there was no liqa. For example, you have to look, there's a hadith which comes two places where Abdullah bin Burayda is mentioning an Abil Aswad. It's basically the same narration in both places, just different asanid. قدمت المدينة وقد وقع بها مرض فجلست إلى عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه. That he mentions he came to Medina and he sat with Umar, and the janazah was passing and people started to praise the janazah. So Umar radiallahu anhu said wajabat, and then another janazah was passing and people started to praise until the end of the hadith. So here you can see it's Abdullah bin Burayda who's using the word an and is narrating from Abil Aswad. Now, as we'll do later on, that there were many ahadith which Imam Darqutni rahmallah has objected in Ṣahīh al-Bukhārī. So this here is one of the places where he has objected. Now, since Ibn Hajar rahmallah is claiming that Imam Bukhari rahmallah put the condition of liqa, so here he had to give an excuse because there is no proof that they actually met. Abdullah bin Burayda is using the word an and narrating from Abu al-Aswad, but there is no proof. There is no evidence, and obviously we are not in the same time, so how can we just assume that Abdullah bin Burayda met Abu al-Aswad? So Ibn Hajar rahmallah says, وَلَمْ أَرَهُ إِلَى الْآن مِنْ حَدِيثِ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ بْنُ بُرَيْدَةَ إِلَّا بِالْعَنَى. That I only found this narration mentioned with the word an from Abdullah bin Burayda. So then he says, إِلَّا يَعْتَذَرَ لِلْبُخَارِي عَنْ تَخْرِيجِهِ, and then he tries to give some kind of an excuse. So you can see that he's trying to give an excuse that why Imam Bukhari rahmallah, because he's putting a condition on, he's placing this condition upon Imam Bukhari rahmallah. But if we understand that Imam Bukhari rahmallah did not put this condition, we don't even have to look for all of those kind of weak interpretations or feeble excuses. Then another example of the very same narrator, Abdullah bin Burayda, Imam Bukhari rahmallah narrates from him that he narrates from his father, using the word an. So, an Abdullah ibn Burayda, an abihi radiyallahu anhu. And then he narrates the Ḥadīth. So he's narrating from his father using the word an. Here, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah could not find any excuse. So in Hajj Sari, what he mentions there, ليس له في البخاري من رواية عن أبيه سوى حديث واحد وموافقته مسلم على إخراجه. So he's just mentioning that Imam Bukhari only mentioned this one place. But even if he mentioned that one place, how can it will become an accusation against Imam Bukhari rahmallah. It will work against him that he didn't stick to his principles. So that's one example. There are so many other examples, but for now we'll just stick to this so that we don't digress too much from this topic. And inshallah we'll continue from here on Saturday. Until then, jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.